I've been thinking about this beloved community of ours, especially, I would say, this little thing called the election. Just that. And there's this line I was reminded of in ancient scripture, love thy neighbor as thyself. And this shows up in the Torah, love thy neighbor as thyself. It's also, though, this concept of love thy neighbor, it crosses and spans all the great faith traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, Jainism, Baha'i. In Christianity, in the Christian Bible, also known as the New Testament, love thy neighbor is mentioned 8 times. This is a foundation of Unitarian Universalism, and certainly it's a foundation of New Thought. So I started thinking about this, and I did a little deep dive. There we go. I did a dipe, now known as dipe. I dipe a lot. I love you too, so much, you know this. So I did a dipe, and I discovered that this word neighbor, the most ancient meaning, root meaning of the word neighbor, love thy neighbor, meant to be with and to grow with. That's what neighbor originally meant. And it's active, to be with and to grow with. So the idea of love thy neighbor, it's not an ego type love, it's a soul love. To be with and grow with in a soul love. Another way of saying that is in compassion. To grow with each other in compassion. There was a lot of damage done by non-capitalistic countries when globalization happened. A lot of damage. I would say, though, the greatest blessing of it was, was that it allows us to know our neighbor outside of these walls in a greater way. You know that little computer we carry around in our pocket, in our purse, in our hand? Just with a scroll, we can see what's happening with our neighbors in North Carolina and Florida because of the hurricanes and the storms. With the scroll, we can know what's happening in Palestine and Israel and Lebanon and Ukraine. Now, the ancient writers of the Upanishads and the Gospels and the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Tao Te Ching, they all talk about caring and loving for our neighbor. But what I find so fascinating, I think about them often, those writers, and I think if they could have known where we are, where humanity is today in 2024, because this gigantic world of ours has gotten so small, so very small. And as people in a faith community, I believe it is our moral mandate to care for our neighbors, wherever they may be, whether they're sitting next to you in the pew, next door to you in your home, in one of our neighboring states, across the country or across the world. This is our mandate. The thing about this technology, this computer in our pocket, we teach here in New Thought that God or Spirit or Source or Love is in, through, and as all things. And so I have to believe that this technology has come to the planet at this time so that we can take care of each other, of our global neighbors. Are you with me? That's why it's here. That's why it's here. For each and every one of us. Now the mystics, the ancients, all knew that that was our moral mandate, to take care of each other. What's really cool, I think, is that science is now catching up with what the mystics taught in almost every area. And I nerd out on this stuff, just y'all, like, it is the coolest thing. If you read ancient texts, and then you look at modern science, neuroscience in particular, quantum physics, and you see how science and spirituality were always meant to be interwoven and connected and together. So, have you ever been with someone and they have like bumped their elbow up against a wall or their knee against something, and you wince? Even though it's happening to them, you feel it? Or have you ever, I posted a reel last week, I believe, or earlier this week. There was a 72-year-old man, the first in his family to graduate from college, and his 99-year-old mother was at the graduation. Oh, I have to post this. I have to share this. I wasn't at the graduation, but I'm tearing up at the joy. When I think about the Olympics we just all experienced, are you kidding me? I don't know if there's anyone in this room that can do a double layout dismount from the uneven bars, but when you watched that, did you feel like you kind of did it too? My butterfly stroke is woefully lacking, I'm certain, and yet, when the winner of that incredible feat happened in the pool, I jumped up like it was me, like I had done it. That is because we have what is called mirror neurons. It was discovered by an Italian scientist by happenstance in the 1990s. Our brains literally mirror, hi Ellie, our brains mirror what is happening in the other person. This is why when we see something that is joyful or painful in another person, especially and even when we don't know them, we feel it. Those are our mirror neurons firing. My friends, we are biologically wired to love our neighbor. We're biologically wired to have compassion and care for our neighbor. Now, we do this in spiritual community because that's who we are and that's how we are. But I think it's important to note that it's part of our physiology. I was thinking about this and I came across this piece written by a poet I have just come to adore. Her name is Joy Sullivan. She wrote, "As a child in Central Africa, I grew up hearing the death wail erupt after someone had died. It would catch like a long, terrible wave, building the cries of wolves gather into a howl. It would travel through the village, a communal keening, the sound of dozens of humans breaking at the same time. It is still a sound that I most deeply associate with love." We are biologically wired to love each other. You know, again, science is delightfully and gloriously proving this. Through rigorous studies and testing over many, many years with thousands of people, the scientist, Dr. Joe Dispenza, has discovered that when groups of people, just like here, right here and online at NTCSL, when we join together in community and when we focus on healing and the spiritual practices that we practice and we teach here, like meditation and affirmative prayer and forgiveness and gratitude and compassion, understanding these spiritual principles, when we grow together with our neighbors, when we grow together in a safe and nurturing space, right here, like in our sanctuary or in our classes or in our workshops, an emergent consciousness takes place in the collective. Let me explain that a little bit. We understand, and science has proven, that everything is energy. And so when we are together in community, growing together, expanding our consciousness, our heart space, really expanding into this understanding that we're here to love one another, we are raising the vibration of consciousness. We are raising the energy levels, and they have measured this in 7-day retreats, by the way, with thousands of people, with all these fancy ropes and cords, as my dad would say, electrodes and all these things. They have proven that the energy vibration, the electromagnetic field, raises when you are in community, when we are doing these practices, growing together, coming to service, being here online. We are growing with each other. We are growing with our neighbor. The thing, though, is that, of course, this is ancient knowledge. Again, science is catching up. The Hindu and Buddhist traditions talk about the importance of the Sangha. That's thousands of years old. In Judaism, the concept of a quorum or a minyan, where a certain number of people are needed for the communal prayer. In Islam, it's the idea of the congregational prayer or salat, where Muslims gather together as a community to pray. In Christianity, from the Christian Bible in Matthew, it says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, I am there. The ancients understood the healing power of community. They understood the healing power of our neighborhood. Only now our neighborhood is global. Now there are some that are way ahead of the curve. And there were some in the modern era that were ahead of their time in this very thing. In 1847, just a few decades after having gone through the horrific mass forced migration, also known as the Trail of Tears, an impoverished group of Choctaw Indians in Oklahoma heard about the potato famine in Ireland. Some Quakers had held a meeting, and word got out what was happening in Ireland. This is 1847. The Indians in Oklahoma, a group of Choctaw, heard about this, and understanding deeply that kind of pain and starvation, the Choctaw gave and raised $170. This is 1847. That was a lot of money back then. They gave $170 and sent it to County Cork in Ireland to help with the famine that was happening there. County Cork is where my people are from. Galway and Kinsale, but also mainly County Cork. And this got me thinking so deeply about this idea of caring for our global neighborhood. This was far before there were any computers in their pockets. But they said yes, and it was a sacred yes. And actually, if you go to Middleton, County Cork, you will see a beautiful sculpture commemorating and honoring the Choctaw Nation. This is it right here in County Cork. There is, to this day, a wonderful organization in Ireland called CAIT, spelled C-A-I-T. It stands for Celts and American Indians Together. And together they work to raise money to support areas in the world that are navigating famine. They just recently sent money to Somalia. I was deeply considering this concept this week, as I do. I deep dive into this concept, this spiritual idea of caring for our neighbor, our global neighbor. And I could not believe the email that I received this week. I almost fell off my chair. Let me back up a little bit. In 2019, I became Facebook friends through a friend of my mom. Many of you know her as Mama Peggy. Hi, Mama. With a man who lives in County Cork. His name is Michael O Hurley. I'm certain we're cousins, a few removed. We haven't done our 23andMe yet, but we'll get to that at some point. So Michael, in Ireland, is a diplomat. And he is an extraordinary human being. He goes into war-torn places, to the front lines, and he works to evacuate the most vulnerable who are there and bring them to safety. In fact, he was just in Lebanon, trying very hard to do work there. He was interviewed recently on the BBC. He is a good human. So Michael and I became friends on Facebook, and we would have Irish jokes, and we would talk about, well, we're probably related, la la la, all the things. That was in 2019. In February of 2022, if you recall, Russia invaded Ukraine. In March of 2022, Michael reached out to me, and he knew about our community here, and he let me know that there was dire need in Ukraine. If you remember the very beginning of that war, and I know there has been so much war since then. It's hard to keep it all straight. But if you can think back and remember in 2022 the shock of Russia invading Ukraine, and everything was happening all at once, and people were desperate. Michael asked me if our community would be willing to sponsor 2 families. These were 2 women who were married to men. The men had already gone off to war, and each of these women, they were young women, each of them had a young daughter. They were 4 and 6 at the time, these little girls. And in the beginning of that war, the Russians had a list of names of people who worked in various organizations that they deemed were dangerous to Russia's goals. And so when Michael wrote to me on Facebook, of all things, he let me know that these 2 women and their daughters, I will use his word, they were being hunted because they were on that list. And they were on that list simply because they were volunteers for a humanitarian organization. And Russia deemed that to be a threat. I could feel in Michael's words the desperation. And so, of course, like any of you, I said, we will do anything we can possibly do to help get those little girls and their mothers out of Ukraine and to safety. And so I reached out right away to Reverend Sally and to Practitioner B, and we just kicked into high gear, didn't we? I mean, it was an 11th hour, nail-biting, unbelievable journey. And that very Sunday, we took a second collection. We rarely do that in our community, and you all were so generous. We were able to put the money together. I remember being on the phone with B, and she's trying to buy them plane tickets, and they were sold out, because it was a mad rush to get out of the country and to safety. And at the 11th hour, B, I'm so glad you're here this day, we were able, with all of you, to bring these 2 families to safety. So these 2 little girls and their mamas are happily in Ireland. Obviously, they're dealing with a lot, but they are safe. They have shelter, and they have a place to live and food, and the little girls are in school, and they are safe, and they are out of harm's way. And this very week, knowing that I was going to be talking about the beloved community and caring for our global neighbors, I received the following email from Michael O. Hurley, and I've edited it down, mainly just so that I can get through it without crying. Here's an excerpt of the email. When Russia expanded their war on Ukraine in 2022, we were asked to facilitate the exfiltration of the most vulnerable, Hundreds relied on us to evacuate them and their children. We had no funds, no network, and few prospects for help. In the midst of all of this, you, Reverend Shannon, and the New Thought Center came to the aid of 2 families and provided for their safety and evacuation. This was truly an extraordinary act from people of a different nation, thousands of miles from the front lines of war. We all remain thankful for your help in their hour of need. In Ukraine today, the war rages on. In the city of Zaporizhia, you may have heard Zaporizhia in the news, they live on the front lines, attacked almost every night by missiles and drones. They deal with death and destruction every day. Still, they endure. I recently had the opportunity to address many Ukrainians on the front lines to lift their spirits. I shared stories of our works, and in particular, how a certain faith community, thousands of miles from the front lines, chose to help 2 families in desperate need for no other reason than their humanity and faith called them to do so. The story so moved the audience and restored their hope in the knowledge that they are not forgotten. That today I received this video, I'm going to show it to you in a moment, and a special package, which I will send on to you. By acclaim, you've been awarded the highest honor of the Ecumenical Order of St. John of Gotia. This particular area in Zaporizhia is a very devout Christian community. For your leadership in the collective efforts of your community to save these 2 precious families in 2022. When I think of this, I am overwhelmed. I can never thank you enough. I will send the package to you today. It is a scroll and the Arantia Grand Cross, which I saw a picture of it. It's a beautiful pin. I will send this tomorrow. I hope on special occasions you will elect to wear it and share the good news with your community who shares in this honor by having rendered their own part in the life-saving work you undertook. I know this may be a little thing to you. No, it is not, my friend. But I would ask you to understand that for the people besieged by war to gather for the purpose of honoring you because of the fundamental goodness and importance of your work, it is everything to them. I hope you will, in your own way, come to cherish it as they intend it as a sign of your now unbreakable bond of shared humanity. I wish you every happiness and continued success in your ministry. Michael. Just wait. John, would you run the video, please?
On behalf of the Ecumenical Order of St. John of Gotia, the people of Zaporizhia, and our beloved Ukraine, it is my honor to present to you the Arantia Grand Cross for your invaluable humanitarian works for Ukraine. Reverend Shannon, when the Russians invaded our beloved country in force in February 2022, millions of our people had to flee their homeland for safety. Many of the most vulnerable needed help, or they would have surely perished. You are being presented with our highest honor, the Arantia Grand Cross, not because of your efforts alone, but because your leadership and the incredible humanity shown by everyone who worships at the New Thought Center came together and helped rescue certain vulnerable Ukrainians whose contributions as civil society actors made them targets of Russians, whose brutality in those days have now been exposed to their evil acts in places like Bucha, Irpin, Izum, and small towns and villages across Ukraine. Our elder brothers and sisters in faith record in the Talmud, "She who saves a life saves the world." It is true. The people you and your faith community saved not only live on today, but their descendants will proclaim your goodness for centuries to come. Reverend Shannon O Hurley. I thank you on behalf of a grateful nation and in the name of Christ, our Savior and Redeemer, who will never forget you and the new Toe-centered community of faith, for your care and concern for the poor, the widow, and the orphan in their times of desperate need. Please accept the Arcontisa Grand Cross as a symbol of our gratitude and extend our prayers and thankfulness to the new Toe-centered community of faith. Greetings from Zaporizhia in Ukraine.
To think what they're going through right now and to take the time out to do that for us. This is our work, my friends. This is our work. This is our moral mandate. When we have a direct experience of the divine or of love, when we experience pain or the promise of another human being, when we feel and experience these things, we are having a mystical experience. We are one with God, with Source, with love itself. So my dear beloved community, the truth is that we are wired for compassion. And so this week, my friends, you ordinary, gorgeous, magnificent mystics that I love so much, as people of faith, let us remember this mandate. I invite you into the practice, the spiritual practice of really caring for and loving your neighbor wherever they may live. And let that choice guide your words and, most importantly, your actions. Maybe it looks like taking Jen's 3-week workshop, Practical and Spiritual Tools for Uprooting Racism. It starts today after service at 12:30. Maybe this action for you looks like sending a few bucks to the Red Cross or to the campaign that you believe in. Maybe it looks like, if you live in a state where you don't have mail-in voting, maybe it looks like giving a ride for someone. Maybe it looks like bringing soup to someone who is sick or calling and checking in on someone you know is hurting. Maybe it looks like praying for Ukraine, for Zaporizhia, for Palestine, for Israel, for Lebanon, for North Carolina, for Florida, or anywhere there is pain and struggle. Whatever it is for you, whatever you are called to do, I invite you into that activity of love, of God, of Spirit this week. What a blessing. We get to do this holy and sacred work together, uplifting our neighbors. I want to complete this offering today with a piece I love from one of my very favorite, possibly my most favorite mystic, Teresa of Avila. She wrote this in the 1500s, and this is a modern translation. God has no body but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which Spirit looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which love walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which God blesses all the world. Yours are the hands. Yours are the feet. Yours are the eyes. Yours are the body. The divine has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet, no earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which love looks compassion on this world. Spirit has no body on earth but yours.